From the pages of the World Wrestling Federation magazine, here's updates.
Party people in the place to be. What's going on? It's me. I'm coming to you live in living color, if you will, because the second episode of The Undertaker Last Ride just dropped, and I just watched it, and we're going to talk about it right here. Let's get right into the nitty-gritty of this. In the last episode, we saw a clip of The Undertaker and Michelle watching the now infamous match at WrestleMania between The Undertaker and Roman Reigns, with the now even more infamous botches involved in that match. It picks up 8 months after that Mania match where The Undertaker watches it for the first time. And he expresses what everybody who watched that match, and let's be honest, had some sense, thought at the time. I know there were a lot of people, and listen, I know there's probably going to be some people that watch this, that know me, that, you know, or don't know me, or just watch this or whatever, that were the people that are like, that still hold on to this belief that Undertaker can do no wrong. But Undertaker in this documentary shows that he knows that that match was not good. He knows that he had no business being in that ring with Roman Reigns in that match, and he acknowledges it to the camera. So can we now at least let that rest? He's very visibly disappointed in himself. And Michelle, as his wife, is there to soothe, not boost, but soothe his ego. Like, she says stuff like, "Oh, you're too hard on yourself," etc., which maybe a double-edged sword more than anything else, but, you know, she's there to help support her husband, because at this point she thinks that there's really not much else he can do about it. But she also knows him, and she's kind of hoping maybe that's the thing. That's the way she comes off. It's clear watching this that the match with Roman at Mania that year was supposed to be the end of his career. That's basic. That's super readily apparent. If it wasn't readily apparent in the first episode, it's readily apparent in this one. They talk at length about, you know, it's supposed to be the end of the road. This is how it ends. This is how it go out with, you know, that match that was disappointing. Yada yada, blah blah blah. Taker knows, like, Taker basically admits here too that was supposed to be the end. They go into depth about him putting the robe on and then taking it off in the middle of the ring, going off in the sunset. He knows. He basically expresses that was supposed to be the end of his career. And Vince, even in a brief little snippet there, admits that Taker wasn't ready for that match. That Taker should not have been there in that match. And it looks like there's a glare from the screen here. You're just going to have to ignore that because I can't figure out how to get rid of that right now. So I'm just going to look right there then. Let's see. Vince admits that Taker wasn't ready for that match. And then we go into footage where we see The Undertaker go into the hospital for one of the surgeries that he talks about in the other episode, where it's on that cycle of that he at least was on at the time. Turns out he will be on again, where he goes in for surgery to fix a nagging problem that he had leading into the Mania, one or more nagging problems leading into the Mania, and goes on in that cycle. In the hospital before surgery, we get a more in-depth rundown on some of the injuries that The Undertaker has had over the course of his career, which is a lot. They mentioned the orbital socket bone injury. He says that both his eyeballs came out of the socket, essentially. Damn, Mabel. Damn. It was at the hands of Mabel, who, you know, had a little bit of a streak of being a little bit careless with what he did in the ring. But yeah, my man Mabel vicariously made it in the documentary. They go through a whole other list. Shoulders, his fingers can't straighten all the way. They go through a laundry list of stuff that The Undertaker's had to go through in his career. And it is a daunting, but also very not uncommon list. You know what I mean? It is a long, it is one that makes you think long and hard about what Taker's been doing for years, what wrestlers in general do. But honestly, it's not an uncommon list. You know, knee issues, you know, maybe get hit in the face once or twice too hard. Fingers don't close all the way. You see a lot of guys, especially in the older days, that tape their fingers up and stuff like that because you can't take off for what? You got a broken finger? You better tape that shit up and go and get in the ring. You better earn your money. Over a finger? You're gonna go down over a finger, son? Stop it. You know, so yeah, that list was, it showed how wrestling can take its toll, how this stuff is not really for the weak at heart, especially a guy with the career the Undertaker's has been doing it for over 30 years. Because his career didn't start in WWF. Like, he was wrestling for years before then. So we're talking probably 35 years? Probably 35 or more, maybe creeping up on the other side of 35 years at this point. Whew. All those injuries definitely add. Plus, he was an athlete. He was a basketball player before that. All those injuries definitely come into play, and they definitely add up. And all the surgeries he's had, you know, it's hard. Plus the hip stuff, which I think is what he went in to fix. They actually go in and show the surgery. It was funny incident here where you could hear the Undertaker's theme playing in the actual hospital room as he's going in under anesthesia. And Taker's like, that was an interesting experience. It's to hear the Undertaker's theme as, you know, in real life, his eyes roll in the back of his head because all the anesthesia they're giving him, because they're going to work on his hip. And they work on his hip. If you thought this, seeing them go to work on the Undertaker's hip was like watching an episode of Extreme Makeover Home Edition, where they had these big instruments in there drilling into the bone and cranking shit, and they had to cranking so hard like they had to have the machine do the actual cranking with fulcrums and levers and stuff. Like, this shit was intense. It was super intense. Like, we ain't talking, ain't a little scope thing when they do a little camera. They had like biohazard suits in there because they were going in deep. They were going in deep on Undertaker's hip. That shit. Whoo, boy. And looking at that, it's hard to imagine. It goes back to another point. We'll get to that near the end. But it's not for that. Just looking at that footage is not for the weak at heart. But the good thing is, afterwards, he says he feels almost immediately better. Like, a lot of the pain he had on that one side has been relieved. He's, you know, they have him walking upstairs immediately. Like, he's on crutches or whatever, but he's feeling really good. He's got more mobility. He's feeling a lot better. He doesn't have the pains that he had before. That's a good thing. That's a really good thing. And you can tell at the end of all that, Michelle McCool really doesn't want Taker to go back into the ring. Like, they have a running joke between them about, oh, you always got this thing to do around April. It's funny how that happens. And, you know, he jokes with her, I think I got one more in her, and, you know, she does this, yeah, right, or oh my God, please don't, or, you know, all, you know, the back, you know, the little backhanded, you know, not quite, little truths hidden in jest that happen a lot of the times, especially in a relationship. Yeah, they have it where she knows she's fighting this battle to keep her husband home, really, and they go into that a little bit. They go into that a little bit later, where over another course, because the Undertaker starts working out a little bit. He starts moving around a little bit, starts to get mobility back, like, you know, just moving around more and feeling a lot better. And she understands she's constantly fighting this battle because every time he feels better, he feels like he can do it again. And that's always a problem because he always does it again and then needs surgery again to repair what he damaged from going back in there again. But we'll get back to that a little bit more a little bit later on. They touch on his marriage with Michelle. They don't go into anything else with his family. We don't hear about Sarah. We don't hear about any other previous relationships or anything like that. Just talk about him and Michelle. And this, I was watching with a friend, and my friend Trey from the podcast mentioned that this was really kind of Michelle McCool's episode, and I don't disagree with him. I tend to kind of agree with her. We get more talking head time from her. We get more introspective on how she kind of feels about The Undertaker's career at this point and wanting him home with the family and how they met, and you know the sides of the Undertaker we don't get to see, like the romantic side and all that other stuff. Like, I don't want to hear about the Undertaker being romantic at all. I don't know. No, thank you, please. But that's him. He's a man, and he's with his wife, and they touch on that, and it seems to be a good relationship, right? It seems, and contrary to what some people may say, and I've made the jokes before. I've made the little snide comments that Taker keeps trying himself out there because Michelle, we need another pickup truck, baby. We need to go out to WrestleMania and do it again. Like, I've made those jokes before, but we clearly see in this episode that that's absolutely not true. Like, I've made the jokes before, and they're funny because I put on the stupid accent. Or at least funny to me. I don't know about y'all. I'm the most hilarious motherfucker on the planet. Anyway, but she clearly doesn't want him to do it anymore. Like, she clearly wants him to be home with the family and not do it. Like, in the first episode, she was there for him. She was there to help kind of pump him up and help try to get him more motivated to be in it and stuff like that. But it's clear that she was doing that in the first episode because she thought the first episode was the only episode. She thought that was it. She thought that Roman match was the end of it, was going to be the end of it, win, lose, or draw, good, bad, or ugly. And that was going to be the end of it. So she pumped him up and propped him up for that, like a good supportive partner. Like, it's a good thing to see their relationship and that outline, even for the the few marks that actually do think that she was doing that. I'm joking about it, but there are some people that actually do think that she was just kept pushing him out there over and over and over again for him to retire, over and over again for him to unretire. But that's clearly not the case. Clearly, the issue with Undertaker and retirement is clearly between him and Vince McMahon. They actually talk about the relationship that Vince McMahon has with the Undertaker, and Taker talks about it like it's a father-son relationship. Taker says a lot of stuff that I've heard over and over again about Vince, because one of the things we pick up on the memes of Taker, of Vince in the orange shirt, come from a meeting that they have about Taker's future with the company. And Taker says what I've heard over and over and over again about Vince McMahon. There have been guys that have come in with their own agendas. They're going to get what they're going to get. They may be hot about something, and they're going to tell Vince McMahon off, and they're going to, he's going to get a piece of my mind, and fuck that guy, who's he think he is, or I'm going to get this much money, and this, that, and the other, and I'm going to get all this stuff that I'm going to get in this meeting. I've got it all laid out. And then they come out of the meeting with none of the stuff they wanted, thinking Vince McMahon is the greatest guy in the world, some Jedi mind trick shit, and they're like, how the fuck did that happen? And Taker says the same thing. He's said, I've given up on going into Vince McMahon meetings with a plan, because I've gone in with plans before and come out, and as soon as the door closed on me walking out, I think to myself, I got none of the shit I thought I was going to get. Like, he said to say, apparently that's some amazing witchcraft. And in this meeting, Vince tells him to turn off the camera, which is the second time he does it in here. The first time is when the cameraman asked Vince McMahon about his relationship with The Undertaker. The first time is when they're like, what does The Undertaker mean to you? And you can see Vince tears up. Vince tears up. I know he's older now, he's softer now because he's older now and all that other stuff, but Vince tears up. Vince definitely tears up, and it's real. And he tells him to cut the camera off. He does. No, I'm not. He can't. He won't even sell emotion like that. He won't sell genuine emotion like that. But they do talk about the relationship that he and Taker have, and that relationship has been the driving force for the whole Undertaker thing. It's really been the backbone of a lot of WWF stuff since the Undertaker's come in, because of all the guys that left for quote-unquote greener pastures, and that one interview Taker did on Raw, one promo he did. But Taker's really been the backbone because he's been loyal. He's done what he needed to do, asked to do, all that other stuff. Nobody has a bad word to say about Undertaker as a professional in wrestling, especially for Vince McMahon. And that's part of that relationship. Apparently, Taker even named his kid Gunnar Vincent because he loved and respected Vince McMahon so much. Like, that's a deep thing. And that relationship is part of the reason why The Undertaker keeps coming back. But we'll come back to that a little bit later. Taker, in that meeting, said he was going to go in with a plan, but then he comes back out and sits in the interview chair and he says that he told Vince that he would be ready if he was needed. Which is the wrong thing to say if you're The Undertaker, Vince McMahon, and you want to stay home with your family. It's the right thing to do if you want to go back on the road. It's the absolute right thing to say if you want to go back. Because you wanted to go back. And Taker definitely wanted to go back after watching the Roman match. We go back to him watching the Roman match with Michelle on the couch. And him not liking what he sees. Him knowing that it was not good. And he goes back to support Michelle when she goes into the Women's Royal Rumble that next year. So remember, Michelle was in that Women's Royal Rumble. They showed some awful clips of her. Like, they showed her whiffing some shit. It's like, these are the clips you decide to show of her whiffing these knees to the corner. Like, there weren't better things of her in that Rumble. I don't remember much about her in that Rumble because I've never been a big Michelle McCool fan. But and she didn't do anything in that Rumble to really impress me. I don't remember much about that Rumble, actually. I think that was the first one, the first Women's Rumble, I believe, when they had all the quote unquote legends back. I don't remember much about that Rumble except Asuka. Like, that's Asuka winning, really. And how, anyway, that's a side tangent. But they show her in that Rumble, and he's supportive of her, but he's got the itch. Which anyone who's ever been in a wrestling ring doing more than just posing for photos knows, even then, you know that itch is palpable. That itch is very real. That itch to get back in the ring is a very real thing, and it's very easy to get caught up in that because you love professional wrestling so much, and you want to get back into it. It's like a drug, man. I've heard it described as it being like a drug before, and that's the most accurate, apt description I can give it. It is super easy to miss rolling around in the ring, miss doing this, that, or the other. Regardless of any of the other stuff that happened, it's super easy to not want to let that go or to want to go right back to it. It's incredibly hard to stay away, and Taker doesn't want to stay away, so Vince sends him a ring down to his property. And he and the family and some other people help set it up. You know, you see Taker hobbling, setting up the ring. So, you know, if indie wrestling starts back up again, you know, you're gonna hear all the promoters talk about, hey, you're not too good to set up the ring and all that. You know, that ever long debate about, you know, setting up the ring will not go away because in this documentary we saw Undertaker doing it, and you're not better than the Undertaker, right? That's a whole another side tangent. Again, we're not going to get on that because that's not what we're talking about right now. We're talking about The Undertaker Last Ride. And Primo comes out to work with The Undertaker just before that John Cena match. Yes, that infamous John Cena match. And Primo's like, you know, you're moving around pretty good. Taker mentions he hasn't moved that fast in a long time. He specifically wanted Primo because he wanted like a smaller, faster guy to help make him move. He sets up the ring. He starts working out in it. He gets a trainer in there with him to help him work out, help move his body, help, you know, limber some stuff out because he's clearly going back. And once it's clear he's going back, Michelle is right back in that supportive wife role. She's out there working out with him. You know, she's not gonna try to stop him or anything like that, but she's there with him. But you can tell she's not a fan of him continuing to come back over and over and over again. And I never thought I'd say this, but I'm with Michelle McCool on this one. I'm with Michelle McCool. They spend an inordinate amount of time pumping up this Cena-Taker match like it was better or bigger than it really was. It was not that good. It was not that good. It was better than the Roman one, but that's not saying much. That's not saying much at all. It's still old Taker. It's still, he's not getting as high as he used to on that clothesline. That flying clothesline, the clothesline in the corner still ain't looking great. Even in this souped up footage that we see, because remember, WWE documentaries right now are amazing. They do some incredible work. They are spot on with their production value. I can't say a bad thing about their production. Their production is elite. It's top line. It's top of the list. It's not AEW. It's top of the list in terms of production value. But even that high-end production value can't make that Undertaker John Cena match look better than it was. As much as they want to get over that, it's better than it was. But one of the reasons that they want to show that it was better than it was because they want to show that redemption part of the documentary. They want to show it as he's able to move, he's feeling better, he's able to do this, that, or the other. One interesting thing that happened after that match, and you see the cameras there, is Taker's talking to some of the people backstage, and some people some of the guys, Big Show, some of the other guys, they're back there. Big Show specifically, there's a look on Taker's eyes, on Taker's face, where he's talking to Big Show, and he says something to the effect of, "I wish I had more time in there. It felt good, but it did feel went out there for 5 minutes, yada yada, blah blah blah." You can tell that it irks him that he didn't have a whole lot of time. And Taker sounds like a lot of guys I've heard in a lot of locker rooms about the time that they were given. Not necessarily like complaining, not overtly complaining about it, but kind of complaining. You know what I mean? Like kind of like, I wish, I should have had, they should have had longer. You know what I mean? Like I had more in the tank, should have had longer. I could have been better if we did this, that, or the other. Like that's that post-match stuff that's really real and not a lot of people see. And it's kind of more of a vulnerable side of The Undertaker. Again, we saw the vulnerable side of Taker in the first episode where he's questioning himself and he has these doubts, this, that, or the other. They're all warranted, but he has those doubts, this, that, or the other. Then we're seeing this other side of him where he wants it to be as good as possible. He wanted it to be longer than possible. He thought he had a lot more in the tank. He thought he could go, I trained to be able to go 45, and I went out there for, I don't know how much it was, 10, 15. It wasn't, I don't think it was even 15, but 5 minutes, whatever it was. He was like, he felt so much better physically that he wanted more time in the ring, and you can tell that irked him a bit, which is part of a problem that we have with Undertaker. And again, we're going to get to that a little bit later on. I just thought that was an interesting bit, being in wrestling and seeing how guys have talked about, and myself included, like we've all done it, our segments, our matches, what we did in those matches. This should have been different. I wish we would have done this, that, or the other. That whole thing, like, that kind of complaining to somebody, you put that in the ether, but not necessarily complaining is like the time. You know what I mean? Like that kind of like almost passive aggressive talk about the time you have, the time you had, what you did. You know what I mean? The other really interesting thing that happens at the end of this documentary, this episode, is Taker goes up to Roman Reigns and apologizes to him for the match they had the Mania before. And you could look at Roman's eyes, and he wasn't crying or anything, but you could tell that's one of those almost sports-like moments, almost like moments where like your dad apologizes to you. Not even necessarily that, but like that's one of those moments where like it is what it is. Regardless of sport, it's a vet taking the time to respect you enough to not do the typical vet thing, especially in wrestling, where nothing's ever their fault, but they taking the time to admit that something was wrong from their end and how big that was and the effect it had. Just being big enough to be a man and say to you, "I'm sorry," or "This didn't work out. I'm sorry for this. I'm sorry for that." And you could tell. And Roman did the natural knee-jerk reaction. "No, man, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it." But it had to hit him because he had to know. There's no way he didn't know. Like, you can try to justify it, you can sugarcoat all you want to. That match sucked. Everybody know that match sucked. But the fact that Taker came to Roman like a man, looked him in the eyes like a man, and apologized for that effort, apologized for even going out there when he wasn't ready and all the other stuff, that was really a big moment. That was a big moment. That was one of those. It's interesting. In wrestling's a patchwork of a lot of things in life. One of the things in life, it's a reflection of is really manhood when both are at their best. And this is a reflection of manhood at its best. Professionalism, manhood, respect, all wrapped in one. And this is probably one of the reflections of why The Undertaker is considered The Undertaker backstage and in a lot of wrestlers' eyes, is the respect that he had for Roman to go to him and say, I'm sorry for this. This was not how it was supposed to be, and I'm sorry for this. That was actually a pretty deep moment. That was a pretty deep moment. The next episode we get a glimpse of is they go into the tag match. Yes, that tag match. Kane and The Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels and Triple H as DX. In that showdown, oh boy. Oh boy. Oh boy. And in that clip, Michelle talks about the issue that I think is now looking at the second episode, and I said there was an issue in the first episode. The first episode issue that I think I saw was like, I'm just going to be disappointed in The Undertaker over and over and over again. It's going to be like, it's going to be however many hours, 7 to 8 hours of me screaming at the screen, retire already. But Michelle reflects that this is the problem. There's going to be, this is the new cycle. The old cycle was he geared up for WrestleMania, he did the WrestleMania match, he had surgery, and then he geared up for WrestleMania again. The new cycle is he has a disappointing match, then he gears up again for a better redemption match, has that redemption match, feels good about himself, good enough to go back in for one more time. That one more time is one more time too many, has a bad match, and now has to go back for another redemption match because he can't hang him up right. Yeah. Listen, any of the party people that have ever seen the movie Amy, and I did a review on this years and years ago when it came out. You can check the playlist down there in the movie reviews. But the crux of that Amy, which was a documentary following Amy Winehouse in through her last days and her family. And it was an interesting documentary because a lot of the footage they got from the family, because they filmed a lot of stuff. And it was interesting because of when they did it, because they were in that cusp where like you could film a lot of stuff on the go. Like this was like just in like the burgeoning days of being able to have high enough quality cameras to film your stuff on your phone and stuff like on the go. And so they had a lot of in-depth stuff. And the overall theme of it for me was Amy was surrounded. There was this constant loop of Amy being surrounded by. It was really the people that Amy was surrounded by. But the constant loop was she needed to get better. Maybe she would try to get better, but then fall right back into that trap. That was that cycle. She would, then her boyfriend would pop up with more heroin or whatever the hell. Or her dad would say, you don't need to go to rehab when she really needs to go to rehab. You know what I mean? There was that cycle and it was a devastating, almost tragic documentary to watch. Not almost, it was a definitely tragic documentary to watch. But that cycle that Amy goes through in that, to me, is similar to the cycle that Taker goes through every year, where he should get, and not necessarily get help, but he should get out of the game. But then something happens, or somebody says something that keeps him in the game, And as much as and Michelle is actually, for her part, she's the complete antithesis of the people that were around Amy Winehouse, because she, at least in this second episode, isn't is supportive, but not in favor of Taker continuing to go back. She's supportive of her husband. She's not in favor of him continuing to do this cycle over and over and over again, though. But everybody's around him saying, "Oh, maybe you can do it one more time. You got more, one more gas in the tank. One more run. One more time, Taker. You can do this again. You can do this again." They show John Cena backstage, essentially cutting the same promo he cut on Raw about, he's not too old to broke it down. Maybe now he knows who he is, etc., etc., etc. That's not helpful. That's not helpful. That's not helpful. And unless Taker gets off this cycle, and I've heard some speculation that the whole point of this series is, at the end of it, it basically announces that this is the end of Taker as a in-ring or in graveyard or whatever the fuck as a wrestler in WWE, and hopefully that's true, but who knows? But watching this documentary and seeing Taker again continue this cycle of redemption, I gotta go back, and another redemption, and I gotta go back, another redemption, and I gotta go back, and another redemption, I gotta go back, and another redemption, I gotta go back. It's sad in a different way. It's extraordinarily sad in a different way. Because obviously Taker's not dead. Well, he is, but he's not. But it's sad to watch. You're watching a slow deterioration. A slow physical deterioration, because he's got this athlete, sportsman's head. This whole one more magnificent, glorious moment. One more swipe at the ball. One more, you know what I mean? One more. I got one more in me. I think I got one more race in me. I think I can do it again. I feel good this time. Great. Rather than go off and play with the kids forever now, I feel like I can go back in there and do it one more time. I got something to prove. I can do it one more time. I got something to prove. And this is the second episode in a row. Take a sip every time Taker says he doesn't want to be a parody of himself. That's a new drinking game. Take a sip every time Taker says he doesn't want to be a parody of himself. He doesn't want to be out there too long, this, that, or the other. And yet, he can't convince himself to stop. I know they're trying to pass this off, especially the second episode off, as a triumph for him, that he was able to come back and get some confidence back and all this other stuff and redeem himself. And had this Cena match been the last one, you could try to make that argument. It would be a weak one, but you could try to make it. But we know in real time that it's not. We don't know if the Boneyard match in real time was his last one, but we know in real time that that wasn't his last match. That he did come back a couple more times. And they weren't great encounters. They weren't good. They weren't up to snuff. So then we go back to this part of the review series where we sit and we think about watching this man essentially deteriorate in front of our eyes, and how, at least to me, it's kind of sad. I'm not necessarily the majority of wrestling fans, though. There are a lot of wrestling fans that have, for way too long, been like, yeah, we just want to see Undertaker do some shit. And that's why he keeps coming back. And that's why he keeps having a okay match and then a sucky one. An okay match to redeem it and then a sucky one. And then an okay one to redeem it and then a sucky one. When you're not on the road, like, this ain't like he had a good match on Raw and a bad match on SmackDown and then a good match on Raw and a bad match on SmackDown. This is very few times per year we get to see The Undertaker, and these are lasting impressions that we have of The Undertaker. It's tough, man. It's tough. But one of the big takeaways I got from this episode was I'm kind of on Michelle McCool's side. I'm kind more than kind of on Michelle McCool's side with, like, come on. Like she doesn't nag him. That's one thing I will say. She doesn't nag him. She doesn't, you know, at least not on camera. She doesn't cajole him. She doesn't try to change him. She doesn't try to change his mind. She is just, she's there. She supports her husband. She supports and loves her husband. She knows there's maybe not much she can do or say. And I don't think there is. I think the only people that know this is it for Undertaker, or there's one more or two more, however many more for Undertaker, is Undertaker and Vince. I've said this before. Taker doesn't retire until Vince is fine with him retiring. Really? Like that's the real truth. It's not even when Taker's ready to retire. It's really kind of when Vince is ready to retire. Because, and they kind of show it here. They kind of, you know, when he talks about, you know, he went in with a set plan and Vince changed his mind, you know? And Vince, at least at this part of the meeting, this time when they were meeting, he says, Vince didn't really try to push me. You know, I said, I don't know how much longer I have it. And Vince, you know, wasn't like, oh, you're the Undertaker, pal. You can do this, that, that. He just kind of like, oh, you know, you decide. And that, he was like, I don't know if that was a double swerve or what, if he, you know, laid off the gas pedal because, you know, he knew that I kind of see that as a chance, like, oh, Vince doesn't think I have it anymore, huh? Maybe I can come, or what? Like, Taker was adamantly confused about Vince coming off of the, yo, you can just still do it, pal. We still need you, pal. Pal, pal, pal. So, and Vince isn't telling him you can't come into my rings anymore. He won't. He won't ever do that. He won't ever do that. He won't ever say no to an Undertaker match. Regardless of outcome. Really. One of my biggest, those are my big takeaways. Michelle comes off very level-headed in this. Taker, you definitely start to see Taker's mentality. And Trey was even talking about that. He was like, it's flawed logic, but I see his logic. It's wrong, but I see where he's coming from. He's like, oh, yeah, I'm feeling good. Oh, my knee's working really well. I can do this. I can hit the ropes well again. Oh, that's great. Oh, you know, shit, I got one more of me. Yeah, I think I can keep going. Yeah, I can do one more now. Yeah, I'm feeling good now. I can do it one more now. Now, I can go now. What about after now? That's what I think we're going to see. This documentary series is enthralling. As soon as I saw it up, I was like, I'm right there, and I'm gonna see. That's exactly where I'll be next week too, party people. I need to know down there in the comments section what you thought about this episode, what you thought about the build and the actual match between Taker and John Cena. I myself was not a fan of either. The build, it was so dreadful to me because I did not want to see Taker back. I didn't. I am of the camp that I really don't want to see Taker back for a long time. I don't want to see Taker even do a guest appearance spot where we watch his entrance for 20 minutes, lights come back on, he kneels and then walks away. I don't even want to see that for a while. I want to see Taker recuperate and rest for, and by a while I mean year or years. I don't want to see Taker. First off, that's a spot for somebody else. Secondly, that man, well, first off, that man needs to heal up and fix his body and enjoy his life. Secondly, that's a spot for somebody else. I know. I'm a little selfish sometimes. But that's a spot for somebody else. And it's getting sadder and sadder. And third, it's getting sadder and sadder to see Taker go out there. Even for the Boneyard match. You could see Taker walk around like an old man for that Boneyard match, dude. Like, that wasn't fun to watch. Taker walking in the Boneyard match like he walks back. That wasn't fun to watch, man. I give it all the cinematic effects and the Taker logo came in the back. Fuck that. But I want him to be able to walk and enjoy his fucking life. That's what I want. That's what I want as a human being. That's what I want as a human being. And as a fan, I don't remember him as broken down and old like that. I want to remember, you know, his amazing matches. But, you know, I'm just one guy. You're one person too. So comment down there what you thought about all this, the episode, the lead up. I have a newfound respect for Michelle McCool as a person. Like, I didn't think one way or the other about Michelle McCool as a person. Like, I don't like her wrestling, but I didn't think one way or another about her as a person. I have newfound respect for her as a person, as a partner. She's clearly supportive. She clearly loves her husband. This was a good episode. This is definitely a good episode. I'm looking forward to seeing what the next episode brings. I'm looking forward to you looking forward to that. Tell me what you think down there in the comment section. Like, share, subscribe. Do me a favor, please. Hit the links in the description, particularly that juicy one that looks like patreon.com/surreal469. Oh, be still my heart if you click that link, because you'll be helping to keep the lights on to the party. I am not within monetizable range yet on YouTube, and I need you to help fix that, right? Because really, you can't monetize on YouTube anyway other than Super Chats. I mean, I'm not in Super Chat land yet, so I need you to hit the Patreon subscription below. Also, the links in the description, they help immensely if you go to like Amazon or whatever and actually buy something through the link. Just like go through the link in the description to Google or Groupon or Amazon and then buy some stuff that actually helps out. Helps keep the lights on the party. And you're not doing anything more than you normally would. And that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. Party people, I appreciate you. I will see you next time. And until then, cheers.
I'm a nice guy, I'm a nice place, with a nice smile on my nice face. Turn it back and I'm making sure my night's straight. And when you're out of town, I'll be making sure your wife's straight.